Hello there, year one, and welcome to your geography lesson today. Today we're going to be comparing weather in countries near the equator to weather in the United Kingdom. Do you remember last week we talked a little bit about the equator, didn't we? And I showed you this ball that was representing the Earth, and that this was the imaginary line that goes all the way around the Earth. Okay, do you remember we talked about that last week? And closer to the equator, it's very, very hot, and countries further away from the equator are very cold. We're going to look into that in more detail today. Okay, then. Now, let me just move my camera down just a little bit there. I want you to have a look at these pictures here. Okay, so we've got some sledging, we've got some leaves, we've got some ice skating, we've got some gardening, camping, barbecuing, paddling in the sea. What I'd like you to do is pause the video here and have a chat to the person in the room or to you, Teddy, and talk about which season you might do each of these things. So remember our 4 seasons. Which season might you do each of these activities in? Pause the video. Have a go at that now. Okay, welcome back. What did you decide? Well, winter would be sledding. Playing in leaves would be autumn. Ice skating would be winter. Gardening possibly could be spring. Camping would definitely be summer. And so would those lovely barbecues. And paddling in the sea. That could also be spring, but it'd be more likely summer. Okay, let's move on then. So today we're going to be looking closely at the weather in Singapore. Okay, now Singapore is a country in the Southeast Asia. So do you remember we talked about continents as well? Well, Singapore is in the continent of Asia. Now we're going to have a little look because I haven't got a globe to give to you. We're going to have a look at a map, and then we're going to find it on the map and zoom in. Okay, because it is only a very small country. So here is my map, and here I have got my different continents, and Singapore is in this continent here, Asia. Okay, now this line that goes across the globe here is called the equator. Now remember I said earlier, it isn't really a line that you can see, it's just where the world, it's the middle of the world, if that makes sense. So it's like an imaginary line that goes all the way around. So it's not really there, but it's just that is the middle of our globe. Okay. Now, here is a map of the world with all of the countries that are highlighted on there. Here's the United Kingdom over here. Now, Singapore is in the continent of Asia, and Singapore is over here. Now, can you see it's quite close to Malaysia? It's close-ish to Australia, close-ish to India and Thailand and Vietnam and Sri Lanka. We're going to zoom in now and have a little look. Okay, now Singapore is just there. Okay, it's just here at the end of Malaysia. All right, and then the equator is just here. Oh, it's just here. So remember, the equator, you can't see it, but it is the middle of the Earth. Okay, the middle that goes around the Earth, and Singapore sits exactly on the equator. Okay, and that's what we're going to be finding out about today. What is the weather like in countries that are near the equator? Is it the same as the UK, or is it different? What do you think? Pause the video, have a chat with the person in the room. What did you decide? I wonder if your predictions might be correct. Should we go and see? Okay. So Singapore is close to the country of Malaysia and Indonesia, but Singapore is very small. Malaysia and Indonesia are much bigger. Okay. Now, Singapore is a very unusual place because it's made up of several islands. Can you see here all of these little islands? So this is the island here, and then we've got all of these other little islands too. But it's a city-state. That means there's no other towns or cities. The city is the country. Singapore is a city, but it's also the country because it takes up all of the land. So the map shows some names of the islands and areas of the city. So it's not different cities within the within Singapore. Singapore is the city, and these are just different areas, a bit like Erdington and King's Heath. So it's just different places there. Okay. Now, what do you think the weather might be like in Singapore? It's closer to the equator. We talked about, didn't we? When you're close to the equator, it's a lot. Oh, bring it this way. It's a lot warmer, isn't it? Where the further away from the equator, remember we talked about the North Pole and the South Pole. The North Pole's at the top and the South Pole's at the bottom. It's really cold up here. So if the weather is really warm in the middle and it's getting colder, and Singapore sits right on the equator, what do you think the weather might be like there? And how do you think it might be different to the weather in the United Kingdom? Pause the video, have a chat with the person in the room. Okay, what did you decide? Shall we find out and see if your predictions are correct? Okay then. So let's have a little look. I'm going to move my picture right up there so I'm not covering up the pictures there. Let's have a look at these people in the streets of Singapore. So if I'm having a look here, they're wearing flip-flops. That's telling me something if they're wearing flip-flops. When do we wear flip-flops? Is it in winter? No, I think we get very cold. The main time that we wear flip-flops is in the summer, isn't it? Flip-flops and sandals when it's quite warm. Okay. And they've got t-shirts on and short sleeves. I can't see anybody in a coat. Let's have a look at this picture here. Okay, so the lady's here. She's got a summer dress on. This lady's got a vest on. They've got t-shirts on again. Okay. A running theme here, isn't there? If I look at this picture here, again, people have got t-shirts, but it's nighttime. Now that's telling me, the clue that I'm getting there is that it must be very warm at nighttime as well. So it's warm in the day and it's warm on the evening. Nobody's wearing a thick, heavy coat. Nobody are wearing scarves. They're wearing t-shirts and they're wearing flip-flops and sandals. So it's telling me it must be very hot. However, when we look at this picture here, they've got umbrellas. Why have they got umbrellas? Wonder if it's raining there. Do you think when it rains in Singapore, it's going to be the same as the rain in our country? Now remember, we're quite far away from Singapore. I might think, because if I look at the picture, people are still wearing their t-shirts and their flip-flops. I wonder if it's still very warm, because sometimes you can have rain that is warm and you can have rain that is cold. And in the different seasons, and we're going to talk about the seasons in Singapore a little bit later on, in the seasons, depending on where in the world the country is, the rain will differ as well. So it might be that the rain in Singapore is a lot warmer. Let's find out some more information about Singapore. There are lots of beautiful parks and beaches with tropical plants and animals. So let's have a look here. What can we learn about Singapore from this picture? Well, I can see lots of lush green land, lots of plants all along here, lots of trees growing. It looks like that it gets watered very well. Now, when we think of hot countries, and we talked about this before, didn't we? Hot countries are often, you might think that they are going to be very dry. But Singapore doesn't look like it'd be very dry and barren. It doesn't look like a desert, does it? Even though it might be very warm. To me, Singapore looks like it might rain a lot to give these lush green plants and trees. But they're not just any plants, they're tropical plants. Tropical plants. Now we might find tropical plants in places such as the Amazon rainforest, which is in Brazil. And Brazil is very near the equator as well. Do we find many tropical plants in the UK? Not really, we don't. We don't find many tropical plants in the UK because the climate isn't warm enough for them to grow. The climate in the UK is too cool and it varies a lot. So sometimes it can be very cold and sometimes it can be very warm. Whereas the temperature in Singapore is often very similar. It doesn't get too cold and it doesn't get too hot. It stays very similar. Okay, let's have a little look. Now, let me move my camera again. Now, because it's near the equator, Singapore is warm all year round. And it stays warm at night time too. People rarely wear coats or jumpers. So lots of tropical plants grow in Singapore because it's sunny, warm, but very wet. And we'd said that, didn't we? It is very wet in there. Now, most months it rains almost half of the days. So if we think if it's a month of 30 days, for 15 days it will rain. That's a long time, isn't it? And in Singapore, instead of having 4 seasons like how we have winter, spring, summer, and autumn, they only have 2. They have the dry season and the wet season. And that's called the monsoon season. And a monsoon is a real heavy rain. Now, in monsoon season, it rains even more. So they have monsoons from November right through to January. And then from February, right through to the end of October, it's when it's drier. It's the drier season. And in the monsoon season, even though it's raining a lot more, it's still very hot. And we talked about that earlier, didn't we? Even though the people were holding up their umbrellas, they still had their t-shirts on. So it must be very, very warm. The word that we use when it's hot and it rains is humid. It can become quite humid, okay? And that means there's a lot of moisture in the air. And often we might have humid weather here if it's going to thunderstorm. But we don't have thunderstorms all the time, do we? We don't really. We only have them occasionally. Whereas in Singapore, they have them a lot more. Now, your activity today is you're going to need to think about what you would need to take clothes-wise and footwear-wise to Singapore. I need you to think about the climate in Singapore. Do you remember we talked about it being hot, humid, and from November to January, it's monsoon season. So if we were in February now, they would just be coming out of monsoon season. And remember, a monsoon is very, very heavy rain. So what would you need to take with you? What would you need to have? What I'd like you to do as your activity today is draw all your clothes and footwear that you would need to take to Singapore in your suitcase here. Then once you finish that, you're going to write a packing list for a person coming to the UK from Singapore. What would they need to bring? Remember, the climate in the UK is very different to the climate in Singapore. What would they need to wear on their feet? What kind of clothes would they need to bring with them? So once you've finished your packing list, you are going to create a packing list for a person in Singapore, and they will have to think of what they will need to bring to the UK. Now, you have fun doing that today, Year 1. And if you get confused and you can't remember the weather, go back through the video. You take care, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your work. Bye now.